Alrighty, welcome to the Psychedelic Club Ask series. Today we've got Payam. Payam is how you pronounce your name, right?
Call me Red Tomato, whatever.
Red Tomato, human brother on the planet, fellow person walking the path, and Payam. I do want to call you by your right name because I feel like I've messed it up.
It's all right. That's fine. We'll just leave it at that, Clay.
Okay, Payam. Cool. So welcome everybody. We just went live. This should be streaming to a couple different platforms. We don't have anybody here in this moment, but it's recorded anyway. So we're going to stream it to the platforms and we're going to record it. So this will be available on YouTube and on our website also. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce Psychedelic Club a little bit, talk about how Payam and I came to cross paths, and then we'll just get into it. So Psychedelic Club. Psychedelic Club is a chapter-based 501c3 dedicated to changing the cultural narrative around Psychedelic Club. We don't sell anything. We do not have psychedelics for sale. We don't have substances for sale. We sell nothing but an idea. And that idea is that a personal interest in psychedelics is valid, healthy, and should be socially acceptable. We facilitate conversations, give people an above ground space in which their interest can be recognized, honored, and appreciated, where we can find community, come together around a mutual interest in psychedelics and the amazing, incredible phenomenon that they represent in the world. So Payam and I met in a very interesting way. I was leaving the Rainbow Gathering in July in Taos, New Mexico, and I had run out of hape. Hape is a medicine that I work with as a practice and have a relationship with, and I was out. So I Googled hape New Mexico, hape medicine Taos or something like that, and somehow ended up on your Instagram page. Payam, and I sent you a message and reached out to you. You said that you did have some hape, and you were so gracious in your willingness to provide that and share that particular tobacco medicine. And we chatted for a little bit, and in talking to you, it just seemed that you were a very yes, the tobacco medicine.
Tobacco medicine.
That you were doing this thing in the world, that you were an above ground practitioner of psychedelic medicine in a place where there aren't a lot of people doing that. And it seemed to me very brave, courageous, and just dead on, directly on to the thing that we're trying to do and the thing that we're trying to accomplish. It seemed to me that you had aligned your life, who you are, and your existence in service of the psychedelic renaissance, in service of the medicine movement. So I was just really impressed, and I wanted to chat with you. You have a lot of really interesting things to say, so I appreciate you being here.
Thanks.
Yeah, maybe if you want to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
Sure. Well, I wanted to first thank you, Clay, for your genuine nature and the human being that you are. You know, we've spoken.
Thank you, brother.
It's when we connect to our humanity, when we meet ourselves as brothers, as kinfolk, and heal there is when the healing happens. So, and, to everyone that's on this path, you know, I acknowledge you. Oftentimes people have come to this path because of some pain, or they're seeking something or seeking answers to questions that they haven't been able to answer. So I acknowledge your courage and your determination to heal. God knows we need it all. So thanks for that. Who am I? Well, I facilitate a few different medicines. My work is primarily focused on trauma. And I started working with 5-MeO-DMT, UFO, then went into working with psilocybin and MDMA, but all in a very therapeutic context, all in a way that was done in a held, safe space to help people really dive in deep in a very supportive fashion to heal themselves, namely because I was put on the mat, blasted off to the next world a few times, and then they're like, here's a PDF and a link, and if you have a hard time, there you go. And you know, you and I have had many conversations around, I guess, various faults of many different kinds of practices and how they could shift in order to help people be supported to affect long-lasting change in their lives. because that's ultimately what we seek. So as practitioners, as facilitators, as shamans, as whatever you like to call yourself, that's probably the motivating factor of why hopefully you're doing this, but how it's fine-tuned and offered to the world can always be shifted using different knowledge and incorporating it in our knowledge so that we can really help people the way they need to be helped.
You've just done a couple of really interesting things there. The first in your intro, the recognition of the fundamental shared humanness, recognition of walking this path, and the intention that so many of us share. It's easy to get lost in the glitz and the glam and details besides the fundamental human detail, which is we're trying to heal. We're trying to embody our soul, some more of who we are into the world. Like that's the fundamental place from which a lot of us come to this. So I appreciate that. And then also the recognition of the need for presence and the need to show up in that way. So I'm wondering where being this practitioner, where your experience comes from and where your training comes from and how you got onto this path.
Sure. Well, what I was told is that I had a shamanic initiation once I came back. And this is the second time I sat with 5-MeO-DMT. I didn't know what that meant. I was still kind of reeling with what was revealed to me. And but shortly after I came back on the mat the second time, my mentor was there and I said, "Show me the way." And he said, "Okay." And that was the starting to my introduction. I'd say to everyone that we're all connected to spirit. We just forgot. Every single human being, every single sentient being is connected to spirit. We just forget that we are. We're so disconnected from our humanness that we don't even know that there's something outside of our own personal experience. So I'm no different than any other human being on this planet. I just happen to focus my attention on something. And for some reason, I've been able to help people in the way I've been able to help them. So in that respect, I always try to remind myself that I'm just a person. That's why I told you, call me Red Tomato. I don't give a shit. Yeah, so my mentor's a psychiatrist actually, and he took me to ceremonies, and that's where all the magic unfolded. And I would go to the next world and connect with people and meet their traumas. And what happened to me is that people's trauma manifests in my body. So there's something called somatic empathy, but to me, I call it somatic merging. So the fields of energy between me and the person I'm sitting with melt, and what has transpired in their lives, the things that have happened to them physically, mostly the trauma that lays in their body shows up in my body, and oftentimes I have visions about that. I'm able to help them. So that pretty much cracked my mind open, and my mentor said, go study this and this. So those things, a few things kind of opened the doorways, but understanding how to bridge the gap between the spiritual experience for Westerners. I didn't grow up in a village in the Amazon, so I didn't have a lineage or someone to explain to me, oh, those visions are totally cool because you had them since you were 4. In fact, I did, but I thought, they were just flukes or whatever. And even after I started doing this work for some time, sometimes it still concerns me. I'm like, why do I know these things or whatever? But again, just go there and it's all there. But to find a language to bridge the gap between the spiritual experience of medicines and our Western mind and our Western understanding of reality, and also this a framework for therapy that can easily bridge the gap was missing. I found the work of Gabor Mate. Then I found the work of Bessel van der Kolk. Then I found the work of Richard Schwartz. Then I found the work of Peter Levine. And they're all saying the same thing. And it's just basically plug in what makes sense to you with the practice that you have, and it turns into more of a complete model that you can use to help people. And that's what works for me. That's been really helpful to go in there and do some serious soul surgery and help people with not only going to spirit plane and understanding, but coming and incorporating that and truly affecting healing themselves in the present sort of common consensus reality.
Yeah, you're a really interesting person in that way, because you don't have the typical Western medical training, not therapist training. You are an IFS practitioner, but a lot of your experience comes from ceremony and from experience, and you use that as the basis and as the foundation for where you come from, and that's
Yeah,
a thing that I think a lot of people have been attracted to, feeling called to the medicine or feeling like there are these alternative paths to being a practitioner, are these alternative paths to healing outside of the typical standard Western medical training, but it's a treacherous sort of path. And there are people who have been called to serve medicine or step into that role who maybe aren't prepared to do so. So it's like the same path that you walked. There are people following behind and like leaving litter. So the fact that a pathway is open to people to serve and to heal the world that doesn't involve typical Western medical training is amazing and beautiful, and it leaves a lot of room for things to go wrong. I think it's really funny that you, even though you haven't had that training, like the typical Western medical training, you're now being called to speak to conferences of surgeons, and you have this you exist in this realm whereby you now have something to teach even the people who are more classically trained. Would that be accurate, that most of your experience comes from just that, like in the moment, sitting in ceremony, being with people, and then there were, what I'm hearing you say is then after that there were opportunities where you learned and became an
yeah.
IFS
Well,
practitioner.
I was a biopsych major in school, so I was going to be a psychiatrist. Thank God I didn't. I was going to be a pill pusher, and we definitely have a lot to discuss in that realm, because I certainly have some major issues with that. Um, but yeah, I mean, my work started with medicine, but again, like I said, I don't have a lineage. I don't claim to be a shaman. I mean, people call me all sorts of things. I'm like, whatever is comfortable for you. Call me a red tomato. I don't give a shit. Um, because I'm not attached to any of that. I really don't care. I'd like to think that I don't have anything to prove. The people that I work with, they come to me. I'm not trying to sell myself. So, um, you know, medicine started, and then then there were gaps. Like I said, there were major gaps in the way things were practiced that I went through myself as a person on the mat, on the other side, if you will, that were really objectionable to me, incredibly objectionable to me. And I was like, this is not the way things should be. And my sister's a therapist, actually. She's like, the people that get revealed what had happens to them, in childhood trauma, which was my case. There's two ways. They have post-traumatic growth, or they have PTSD, and they jump off a bridge. Luckily, I had the right support and the right tools, and it all made sense. And I was like, okay, I get it. But a lot of people come out of these experiences a lot more traumatized than they were when they came into the experience. And a lot of facilitators don't have training. They don't know what to do with it. They're like, oh, the medicine will take care of it. And we talk about spiritual bypass. That's completely reprehensible, in my opinion. And if you don't know what you're doing, and if you open up someone's can and then send them out of the door with a PDF, what are you really doing? You and I have talked about that a lot. But every person, every human being is unique to their own experience, their own background, their own learning, what's resonant with them, how they work with the medicine. There's practitioners that sexualize themselves and they incorporate sexual things in work, and that's completely opposite end of the spectrum of what I do, because I work with sexual trauma. You know what I mean? So there's all people doing all kinds of things, and whatever that may help certain people, certainly. But I just I had to figure out what worked for me, and this has been really helpful in helping the population that I help, and has given me the opportunity, because of the nature of my work, and how I've been able to help people, some very high profile people who are decision makers, who are like, go talk to this 800 people. Tomorrow I have a lecture to 800 world surgeons. How did I end up there? Well, because I'm working with someone who can make decisions. So everyone is going to have to find their own way, I guess. There's no one particular way. There's no one particular particular answer. Every person is unique to who they are. Um, but I think there are certain things that need to be attended to and learned about to incorporate into your practice that can really help affect some long-lasting change.
Yeah, those specific modalities or those specific practices, though there are many paths to this. People come from many different places. I'm wondering what kind of modalities you work with that you find most effective in your work. What sort of practices and specific practices and
Yeah,
modalities that you work with, that you give people, that you've been trained in, and that you find most effective in the psychedelic space.
yeah, I think that. I mean, I can explain to you. Yeah, maybe I'll start a little bit by sharing a little bit about my childhood. You know, it's my entire life was kind of trauma, um, and I was informed by trauma subconsciously, unfortunately, but we all are. And so that was kind of that sparked my interest, really, like the nature of mind, what happens in the nervous system, what happens in the suppressed emotions, physical sensations, how those things really inform, calcify, and then misinform really the mind, and we end up accruing all sorts of dirt in our lives, and those are the extra trauma on top of the trauma. Um, I studied martial arts for many years, so body dynamics was really, you know, I'm able to control my body, control someone else's body, support them. Learning body dynamics, especially in my work, is absolutely critical. I was a yoga practitioner, so there was a lot of understanding, you know, about body, how to hold the body, how to support the body. I studied Thai massage. That was very elemental in helping people in case they're having difficulty or putting them in a position where they're able to release what they need to release, the stuff that's in the stomach or the psoas. There's all sorts of different channels in the body. So that was another element of my training that I didn't know I could incorporate in what I'm doing. It's just part of my history. Then I guess, you know, I'll say, I mean, I think this is interesting for people is, you know, Western therapy thinks about top down, like, and we think bottom up, or top down and bottom up. So we have to understand the nature of somatics of the body, uh, stored emotions that may not have a memory, and understand, helping the mind understand what is in the body, especially with medicines, depending on what you're working with. Um, so understanding that there's a two-way channel, how that works. Understanding how you can help someone regulate in case they're dysregulated. And if they're dysregulated, maybe that's where they need to be. Um, understanding what else? You know, like I said, IFS is really cool. Like trauma work is critical. We're all traumatized. So really, the sad thing that I see is therapists not knowing how to be personal in space where people are freaking out, where people are releasing. They don't know what to do with themselves. They're just human beings. We're all human. Um, but if you don't know how to contain yourself and if you get triggered, then you're not present for other people. And this is like in a contained space of like a ketamine clinic, which is another conversation we can get into. Um,
Hmm.
so when people start to get a little bit more comfortable with their own nature and how to be in spaces where people are screaming and shouting and puking and peeing and shitting everywhere because that's what needs to happen, and it doesn't faze them, then that's a good starting point. But how do you do that? I mean, you have to have the experience and be in the situation, expose yourself to that, and see what you need to sort out in yourself, and what is it that makes you uncomfortable. What is it about your matters that are getting triggered? So it's kind of like a very holistic way of working. But ultimately, Clay, it's about connecting to your own humanity, being in your own humanity, and meeting others in their humanity. At the most raw state, at the most vulnerable state, at the most in pain state, at the most horrific, the worst shit you could ever hear state that I deal with. And be like, I am so impressed that this human didn't kill themselves sooner because I don't know how I would have survived that kind of trauma. But people do. And brings you back to a state of compassion because you just don't know who that person is that walked down the street and cursed you out because you just don't know what their background was. You don't know where they came from. You don't know where they're headed. So you stay in a state of compassion because if you're not there, then you should definitely not be doing this work.
Yeah, that fundamental recognition of humanness. It's not really something that a lot of training programs or a lot of places really teach. In fact, it seems that some professionals have their professionalism as a shield or a membrane, a barrier between themselves and the other people. So it's a really fascinating phenomenon, fascinating thing. People again and again come back to that
Wait,
semantics. Oh, can you can't hear me? Uh-oh. Yeah, I don't know. Can you hear me now? Hello, check, 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 check. Can you hear me? Yes, no, no. All right, some difficulty here. Just bear with us for a moment. We can hear you. Nothing has changed on this end. Maybe see if we can check audio settings real quick. Sorry, friends. Anybody who's here with us right now watching, we're doing this live, so maybe we'll cut it out in the uploaded version, but just keep bearing with us. No audio, huh? No audio? Hmm. Let's see.
you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
You hear
Yes.
you? You hear
Yes.
me?
Uh-huh.
I don't hear you.
Weird.
Um,
Hmm. Do you have hmm. Yeah, anything now?
should should I get
Oh.
off and get back on, Clay?
You could try that. We're streaming, so I don't know. You can't hear me at all. Maybe here, plug it in. Let's see.
Clay?
Yeah, can you still not hear me? Yes or no? Up, down. No? All right, so we're just rolling with what comes, meeting it at the door, laughing with humor. Okay, so Payam's gonna try it. There's a poem that I really love called "The Guest House" by Rumi that I think applies here. This being human is a guest house. Each morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweeps your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes, for each has been sent as a guide from beyond. That's The Guest House by Rumi. I think it applies in this situation, just meeting what shows up with a little bit of humor. Can you hear me now, Payam?
Yep.
Okay. All right, we're back. Welcoming all the difficulty, technical or otherwise.
Sorry about that.
No worries, man. No worries at all. It is a thing that happens. So glad to have you back. I just shared a little poem that's precious to me, and now we can continue, man. So yeah, I'm wondering. We're talking about modalities and the things that work
Yeah,
the best and the sorts of
yeah.
practices. And I'm wondering why you decided to forego licensing, why you
Mm,
decided to
yeah.
forego a traditional therapist path and take the less well lit or less well marked path that you have.
Well, I guess number one is how do you explain spirit and put it into a system and an institution and try to explain spirit and try to merge that with therapeutic model. I have friends who are therapists who I love and respect and I learn from, of course. And I had that conversation with them. I said, what do I do? And they're like, you're 30 years ahead of what we're doing and don't even bother. Number one. Number two, if you do that, then you're bound by a lot of constraints, many constraints, and you can easily lose your license, and so you're beholden to certain, um, I guess, modes of practice and conduct that in a shamanic or ceremonial space would completely modes of practice that would not, again, they don't meet, like touch, like getting in there and someone is releasing and you got to hold them, walk them into the bathroom, and whatever needs to happen. There's many things that just are not allowed in the Western practice, and it didn't interest me ultimately. For me, finding what I needed to find to work the way I needed to work to help the people that I needed to help is already done, and I'm still learning, obviously. Um, but yeah, to me, it seemed like there was many more blockages than openings if I were to go and get my LCSW or masters in whatever, some masters in psychology, or it just didn't interest me. It was too much time that would be wasted.
So yeah, I mean, you've kind of already answered this, but I think about that translation and the difference between credentials and competency. It seems to be the case that there's a genuine discrepancy in this area of work between credentialing and competency. That some people who are highly credentialed are not competent in the psychedelic space, and other people who have no credentials at all are highly competent in the psychedelic space. And it's a very difficult sort of thing because we have all of these not only abuses of power, but unskillful practitioners, people who end up, even if it's not direct abuse, causing harm in their lack of skillfulness. Um, and so there's a difference between credentialing and competency, but then also a big difference between simply giving somebody medicine and being a practitioner. It seems to me that you are, in the way that you live, in the way that you carry yourself moment to moment, and the way that you align your life, a genuine practitioner. And that's sort of the thing that's interesting about this practice, or this profession, you could call it, is that it requires everything of a person: alignment and
Absolutely.
integrity with the way that you live your life. So,
Yeah.
what is the difference as you conceptualize it between somebody who simply gives medicine and a practitioner?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. It's a very excellent question. Um, well, Clay, I think that if this is the work of someone's life, and I dedicated my life to this, I travel the world doing this. My partner, thank God, um, she's very open to my work and very patient and allows me to do this. But this is not for everyone. Um, uh, when I say I dedicate my life to this practice, because I am dedicated to every single human being that I work with. I know them inside out. I know their family. I know their history. I know every detail about them. They don't come to me in an office um, after I've seen 10 other people in my private practice and then in the ketamine clinic that I'm working in. I talk to them 3 times for an hour and then try to help them unpack whatever they came up with in the session and then send them out the door. So there's a level of intimacy, emotional, spiritual, psychological, of the knowing of the other person. I think that based on what I've heard, um, people that I've worked with who have been damaged on one level or another, whether it's in a shamanic, sort of neo-shamanic Western practice of medicine or the Western psychiatric model, they one of the things they say to me is, you see me as a human being, you see my soul, you are present with me, and human presence is critical. Sometimes all people need, when I do my intake calls, sometimes you just pause and look at someone. People just cry. Because they finally, like, oh, someone sees me, is not judging me. There's a human being on the other side. Um, and we've lost our fucking humanity. And then you go into a clinic, a ketamine clinic, or God forbid, you go into a psych clinic. A friend of mine asked me to help her. She's being pushed. It's a mess. The Western model is a complete mess. So who are you as a human being doing this? You know, that's a really big question to ask. Of course, I encourage the use of these medicines to help people who are suffering. I'm all about it. But how's it done? How's it done in a way that is attentive, it's caring, it's loving? How is it done in a way this human being who is suicidal feels like they're finally met? That's a really big question, because there are clinics, and I'm very familiar with some of the, McClinics is one of the guys who I worked with last night. He was suicidal, and he was put through the conveyor belt, and he's biracial, and this is mental, Clay. This is absolutely mental, and I try not to get heated about this, but this is the collateral damage that I see. Um, Childhood trauma, and he's biracial, and they put him together with some um, black girl, because he's half black, who just came out of NYU, who has never sat with ketamine herself, who's his therapist. Or he basically asked her, like, have you worked with this medicine? And she skirted around the question and was dishonest with him until he realized that she hadn't even touched the medicine. And this clinic, which is that well known and renowned and spreading all over the shop, um, is trying to scale their business. And I know, because I know the inside workings of this place, because they're just sending people through, and they're like, oh, let's just plug in the black girl, because then we can get the black crowd. Well, the black girl didn't even sit with the medicine, and she's responsible for someone who was about to fucking kill themselves. And they come to me after that. And this is completely irresponsible, reprehensible. And this clinic is actually now talking, doing like these lectures on the ketamine assisted therapy. I'm like, you should not be in business, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh man, this is the thing. People without competency, without skillfulness, without genuine skillfulness want to teach and want to put themselves in positions of power. Want to
That's
see
it. That's it. As soon as money gets, this is what's wrong with the West. It's like, oh, this is the CEO of this company, and now they're making this much money, therefore he must know. Well, what's he motivated by, really? Is he motivated to truly help people heal? Because if that is his motivation, they wouldn't be practicing the way they're practicing. So it's very questionable, some of these practices. Not to say that people who are working with ketamine are not doing this in integrity. I'm not saying that, but these med clinics that are popping up, it's crazy. There's two people that I worked with who were in really bad shape that went through, and luckily it did help them temporarily. But as we know, without the proper deep care working with ketamine, it's like a conveyor belt. The repeat customers just come through, get shot up, sue again.
and these McClinics, they're populated exclusively with licensed, credentialed
Yeah,
facilitators.
yeah,
So just another example of how this licensure and this credentialing does not necessarily translate to competency, but it leaves a huge question, which is outside. So acknowledging that credentialing does not equal competency. How how do you operate in a good way outside, and how do you avoid violations of ethics and scope of practice misuses without a licensing body? Like if being called is the only prerequisite, and all of these people are called to establish themselves as psychedelic healers and to take power in that way, how can we be sure that problematic personalities are not establishing themselves and hold each other as an underground community more accountable to this thing? Because I've seen egregious, terrible violations of ethics, like horrible ethical violations and boundary crossings that are grave. Things like facilitators of mushroom circles, like making out with their participants, making out with people who just told them that they had sexual trauma from their father, like predatory things. And so these are all people who have walked the same underground path or have walked the path of being called outside of a clinic, outside. So it's like there are amazing practitioners, skillful, wonderful people who care and have compassion and have awareness of these things. And the fact that the path is open means that people are walking along it and leaving litter. And it reminds me of hiking.
yeah,
You start, like, a trail gets popular and then people start taking a shit on the side of the trail. You're like, well, hey man, like I love walking this trail too, and I want you to walk it, but you just left a giant turd, right?
yeah.
Right, and all of this beauty. It's like that. So how do we avoid those sorts of things, and how can we hold each other more accountable?
You know, it's a really excellent question. I think that on Facebook, there's like the Bufo gangster, Bufo malpractice, for instance, and that's a good start, I guess. People reporting, but it's a very, very slippery slope. Um, in that, if someone has unprocessed, like I worked with someone, unprocessed homosexual tendencies, and people open up and things start to manifest, and there's a lot of projection. A lot of things can happen in that space. So how do you protect yourself as a facilitator and as protect the person who you're sitting with? That's why I use anchors. I call them people who are neutral parties, preferably people who they know that come and sit. And I just tell them, like, your job is to sit in that corner, and all you need to do is to take them to the bathroom, take them inside, let them come out. That's all you do. Nothing more, nothing less. But yeah, there are all sorts of people doing all sorts of things. I had, and we talked about, training, and I had an assistant, and she, after working with me, started behaving in ways that I couldn't definitely sign off on. And it was just because she was trying to fill a hole that she was trying to fill in the past in other ways that she wasn't able to fulfill. And then she went and did this work to get validation and recognition. We all want that for human beings, but it's not done in a good way.
Yeah, the desire for validation and recognition and using the medicine path as a costume. It seems that there are lots of hurt little boys and hurt egos who have a masculine wound who are using the power and the pretense of a medicine person to play out the trauma and
Yeah.
play out that wounding even further. That's one of the more prevalent stories in the space. And so it's like, well, do we need a registry where
It
people?
happens with women too, just so you know.
Sure.
Female facilitators. Let's be very clear.
Mm.
Let's be very clear.
Yeah. Yeah. This is Francois, right?
Before we go in, you mentioned Francois. Before we even go into that, is how do they present themselves? Like what, like I've seen facilitators who are exposing themselves, in the most salacious ways and on Instagram. I'm like, what are you trying to do? Where is this compensation, the need for this compensation coming from? Why are you trying to compensate yourself sexually? How is it that you're exposing yourself this way? And to what end? Because a lot of people have a lot of attachment trauma, right? A lot of, whether it's a male who has had a father wound, whether it's a male who has had a mother wound, or a female father wound, mother wound, and how those play out in the ceremony. How you need to be present, not to trigger them or have them rely on you as that attachment figure, or the disrupted relationship that plays itself out in ceremony. Understanding what that means, attachment, is critical. And so you expose yourself and your entire body on Instagram. You have 50,000 followers, and then you attract certain kind of people. Are you sure you understand what you're doing? I would be concerned. I'd be very concerned. So, talk to someone, be like, where is this person coming from? Are they genuinely genuine, or are they putting on the mask and the beads and the feathers? And what are they trying to do? It's a very, very important question to ask, Clay.
It brings up this something fundamental about why we're here and what we're doing. It happens on small levels and it happens on big levels, where people, from the guy at a show who's got mushrooms or DMT and is like, hey, pretty girl, I've got this thing. Do you want to come hang out with me because I've got this drug? Or to the facilitator who's got a community around him. It really feels like the same sort of unskillful expression of desire or a wounding that plays out on all these different levels, but the energy is fundamentally the same. And we've been trying to figure out, like, okay, well, what's the, it makes me look at myself and it makes me look at everyone. What's my intention for being here? What is the thing I'm trying to accomplish? And I can tell myself that, like, well, psychedelic saved my life. brought me out
Yeah.
of a problematic relationship with substances and continue to grow my soul and all of these things, and that remains true. And there's wounding, and
Yep.
there's the need to just look very closely and very clearly at the intentions and the things that are there and the things that are present for me. And so trying to figure out how as a community we can have more conversations around this and hold each other accountable, like a registry of a.
Well, sure. Why not? I mean, this is going back to, people making false accusations. People, and I've heard this before as well. And one wrong word by someone who accuses you of something falsely can ruin someone's life or ruin someone's practice as well. So, yeah, as a facilitator or a shaman or a healer or whatever you want to call it, you really have to make sure that you protect the space. You protect the space. It's absolutely critical.
So as a man, as a male facilitator who works with trauma, sexual trauma, and these sorts of things, I'm wondering what right relationship with the feminine looks like, how you practice right relationship and right use of power in relationship to the feminine and those wounds that come in, and what that might look like, how that power dynamic out in a good way. You might be able to not abuse that, and what that means for you.
Well, I mean, I don't have anything to prove. Like I said, in medicine space, if someone tells me to go sit in the fucking corner because they don't want me around them, then I'll do that for them because that's just what needs to happen. I worked with someone again, like they opened up in medicine energetically. I was 6, 7 feet away from them until they gave me permission to even enter their space. And this was in a group setting. I didn't know this person I was actually assisting. Um, but I think a lot of um, think creating a sense of safety happens a lot in the way I work, where I sit with someone 3 sessions, we actually sit together, ideally, preferably, unless I'm coming from Europe or going back or whatever, and I have to do these things remotely, which I don't prefer to do, but that's critical. Understanding boundaries, understanding where the trauma lives in the body, understanding the nature of those things, understanding what their boundaries are, and being attuned to it, listening with your eyes, seeing with your ears. Like, where's this person? What do they really need? And then also getting permission. Like when I give hape, even before I give hape, I'm like, I may touch you here, here. I may go here, here, here. To give me permission? And then they consent. Then I touch them. And these are people that I've worked with. I even they know me. They can trust me with their life. And I always say, I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna go here. Check with your system. Is that okay with you? They give me a go ahead. Then I serve them.
And you're in partnership, like you have a partner, right? Then this is, so you're closed off in that way. I mean, there's this seeking that I think shows up in practitioners where they're not in partnership, and that ends up being a place where they're not operating in a clean way. And it's unfortunate that it needs said, but just the idea that there is no such thing as a consensual relationship between a facilitator, somebody who's positioned themselves in this way, and one of their participants. There's a power dynamic there that makes consent sort of impossible, and people want to ignore that. It feels like
Well,
that's
that's critical. You said that. I use this metaphor of being a rail on the track that we need to be on together to move forward. I can make suggestions. I may say, hey, I think we should go from this medicine to this medicine. I work with Sananga, Ape, and Toad, for instance. I call it the Holy Trinity, peeling back the layers. And then you go in and clean out the house with psilocybin, MDMA by itself, for instance. Um, and yeah, I think that having consent, because you said it yourself, the power dynamic, attachment wounds, people projecting, people giving away their power. These are the people that lost their power in the act of receiving the trauma. So you go in there and actually reaffirm that and re-traumatize them, essentially, instead of, like, here's the power back in your hand, in your body, in your mind. I'm going to be in a position of power again, which is a huge problem in Western medicine. I'm sick, you're the doctor, and I'm sick.
yeah. Yeah, this is just an incredibly tricky thing. I mean, it comes up again and again. It's like so simple and tricky because of how prevalent it is and how much people seem to struggle with it, just that predatory behavior. And there are amazing resources online, like Shakruna has incredible resources for sexual abuse within ayahuasca circles. And anybody who's interested in that should definitely check out Shakruna's website and their resources for sexual abuse in the psychedelic space. I'm wondering, besides sexual misconduct, you've seen facilitators and clinics and other people in this way operating in a way that's less than honorable around medicine, operating in a way that is not aligned with what is best for their participant, like an unethicality or lack of ethicality in terms of the delivery of the medicine, in terms of holding space. And this is a thing that people struggle with, that people really have a hard time with. I mean, I was in ceremony, um, purging, and I was in front of somebody, this woman. She was like, may I hold space for you? It's like, yes, thank you for asking, of course, please. And her awareness is everywhere. It's like everywhere except on the present thing that's happening. There was no container. So there's this language that people adopt, and this idea of what it means to be somebody in the circle. But then there's the actual practice of it. Then there's the energetic showing up of presence and the really doing of the thing. And they're different. And so I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the other sort of less than honorable or ways that you've seen facilitators and clinics not show up in the best way or in the way that is most conducive to the healing of the people that they treat.
Well, I often say I get the collateral damage when people hear about me in the community and they come see me and I talk with them. You know, why are you here? And I've met with people who have sat in 30 ayahuasca sessions in the past year and a half and it didn't stick. Uh, whatever the medicine is, or someone who was referred to me by a dear friend who had a psychiatric condition. There was no intake. They put him on the mat, gave him combo, bufo, ayahuasca, peyote, and I think it was over 3 or 4 days in Northern California, and then they send them out the door.
Combo, bufo, ayahuasca, and peyote in like 3 days.
3 or 4 days, yeah.
Yeah.
So
I bet
the
it was
guy,
expensive too.
the guy came out upside down, and so more is not better. And why do that to someone? One toad session is enough to last someone their entire life. Why smash them so much? So I've seen that happen, or even these very like high-end resort experiences. You know, I only work one-on-one with people unless I'm requested by people in the community that I know personally to facilitate in a group setting, and everyone knows each other. It's kind of a curated experience. It's safe. It's all good. Now, obviously, there's oftentimes 1 or 2, 3 new people because people need to receive the medicine. I don't do group settings, but then I hear about like this woman who I worked with who was went to Costa Rica and went to this very bougie 7-day or whatever it was, yeah, and they put her down in ayahuasca for 3 days, and it was like one like yoga and then meditation and then massage and this and that, and I was like, you had to do all this in 7 days? She's like, yeah. And I was like, well, it sounds to me as though they put 50 people on the mat, and then they inundate them with all these activities not to deal with them if they do open up, if they do need care. You know, like it's just mental to me. Now it's sitting in a room of 20 is enough already, and then you put them in a group of 50 of people that don't know each other, and then do all this stuff and then put them away. And she had to go away for a week just to kind of like digest and then come back. But we worked together. It's like Payam, you know, this is next level stuff. She did some very difficult medicine work, but you know, we did some very light medicine, but the conditions were right, and she got what she needed. So it's not about smashing someone; it's about creating the right conditions. It's about understanding the nature of their mind. It's understanding the nature of their spirit. It's understanding the nature of their history. It's understanding the nature of their trauma. Understanding where the stuff lives. Understanding what they need. All that stuff, once it's considered and attended to, and attended to with the right medicines, the right dosage, gets people where they need to be. You don't need to smash them with all this medicine in 4 days and send them out the door.
It reminds me of the insatiable consumer mindset applied to medicine, of the idea that like more, you just need more. It's that same sort of momentum of the mind that has run our earth into the ground, that says like buy more, be more, have more, do more, this thing that is just driving us to oblivion, but applied to the mechanism with which we hope to subvert that drive to oblivion. It's very strange that like a consumerism of spirit. I mean, Chogyam Trungpa talks about spiritual materialism, whereby people collect experiences as objects. You might be a spiritual hoarder and not ever really like drinking deep from that thing because there's space involved. Like what I hear you saying is that it's not about distracting. It's not about doing 1,000 things after your experience. Is about sitting with the bare, basic, fundamental humanness of just simply being, and that being the thing. It's like it's incompatible and it's incongruent. It's really interesting to see the way that this thing meets our culture, and I'm hoping that the thrum of this and this attitude can start to influence from the other way, because we've seen the consumerist influence in the psychedelic space, and to start to see maybe hopefully the psychedelic space influence the consumer space and
Yeah,
of that.
I I, I was thinking, like medicine shows up, becomes available. People understand the nature of medicine. They understand the nature of spirit. They get the memo. They realize that how everything is corrupted, and then the system breaks. But it seems as though corporations have their claws in already. In creating psychedelics without the psychedelic experience, like that to me is kind of mental to begin with. It loses the spirit of the nature of the medicine. Again, some reprehensible things happening there, and I attended this. I just laugh because you either have to laugh or cry. I have to laugh.
They're very close, right?
Interview would be over. There was some lecture about this new psychedelic that has a mind-altering experience without giving you a trip, that is supposed to help with alcohol. Okay, all right. I'm like, great, cool. Like, let's go see what they have to say. Well, first of all, it's a sales pitch for an hour. There's like 30, 40 people who I think 70 or 80% of them were either affected personally or indirectly through their family because of the alcoholism. So all these people looking for help. Great. The president and one of the people on the board members, they themselves said out loud that they haven't had an experience with a psychedelic. So
as like a badge of honor, right? As if to say that if you have taken a psychedelic, you might be less sane or stable than somebody who has.
So what are you guys doing, first of all? And then they're like, well, this medicine, it was a sales pitch. Okay, this medicine is going to help you feel softer, and then it's going to make you feel satiated, and then you won't want to drink alcohol. Great idea, right? But Gabor Mate, who very much influences my work, he said it's not about the addiction. Don't ask why the addiction, but ask why the pain. Okay, so as I understand this medicine, as they presented it, it's just another band-aid. Let's satiate the need to consume alcohol so you don't have to consume it. Well, in IFS, the consumption or harming or trying to soothe these parts that are wounded, if it's quelled with one thing, then it's going to be expressed to another thing. Maybe it's food or sexual activity or whatever it is, because the wound is still there. So they think, okay, well, it's a psychedelic that just quells the need to drink, and then you're going to be perfect. You can go live your life, just take a pill. And then they had this woman, and I feel for her, I do, and she's in tears. Oh my God, it really helped my dad, and this is so life transformative, and you guys should really invest in this. Basically that's what I was hearing. But And I asked a very poignant question. Obviously, they didn't answer it because I asked them the question that matters, the matters that matter, and they wouldn't answer the question because it was inconvenient to what they're trying to sell. Just, well, is it really addressing the underlying trauma that leads someone to need to calm themselves from the pain by taking this medicine? And corporate greed, and again, it's just another band-aid. Call it a non-psychedelic psychedelic, and then band-aid it, and here, take it and go away and pay up. So I think a lot of people are misguided, Clay. They're very misguided, and they're misguided by greed and corruption, and this is going to be I think there's going to be an explosion of this. And I think there are a lot of people that will, as I know personally, through the people that have come to me, that there's going to be a lot of collateral damage. Whether it's in the med clinics, where the therapist is not comfortable holding someone's hand as they're going through the medicine, which, again, another case, I'm not pulling a rabbit out of a hat. These are specific cases. One person who I'd like you to speak with, because they can recount firsthand what happened. And luckily, again, it helped him not want to commit suicide, but then he found me, and then we went in there and he got what he needed. Not trying to sell myself, go see whoever you need to see. But if you're putting someone through a conveyor belt and not meeting their humanity, what are you doing? And therapists need to really ask themselves, what are they doing? What is their motivation? Why are they doing what they're doing? And then another question is like therapists that need therapy, man. Like it's really remarkable, some people that should not be in the business of facilitating or even serving this medicine in a Western sanctioned sort of framework.
What sort of things would make somebody incompatible, unfit? Code of decorum things, lifestyle things. Like what is it about somebody that would make them unfit to be a facilitator or a guide, or maybe a lot of work that they should do before? And what kind of work?
Well, I guess the first question you have to ask yourself as a human being is, why are you doing what you're doing? Why are we having this conversation? What are we trying to do in broaching these subjects? Why are you sitting on the mat? Why are you in the therapist's office, in the chair? What is it that you're trying to, like this one therapist who I know, and I respect her as a human being, but, she becomes the attachment figure of the people that she works with. She referred some people to me, and she's re-traumatizing them because she's playing the mother figure. Well, you know what? She grew up in a household of alcoholic mother and father. So she's a disaster zone inside, and she's trying to fill her hole by playing mother figure to these people, making a lot of money. And just, again, Ram Dass said, in order to be a doctor, you need sick people. I don't want sick people. I want people to get healed and be on their way, and they can call me and say, hey, happy birthday, and I love you.
So this woman that you're talking about, she's got a wound inside of her that is playing out, that is helped by her being the facilitator. She gets to play the mother role, which she never got to play. And then people who have the mother wound get to experience that, but it's just sort of
fills her own hole, and that's it. That's her life. And she charges, and she's a therapist. Actually, I offered, I said, you know what, let's sit down together. I'll give you a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and let's just be together. And she was absolutely petrified. She petrified of her own shadow. And people reach out to me, and again, there's a psychiatrist in Berlin who reached out to me. He's like, let's do this. I don't care if I'm gonna lose my license. Come down and let's talk. I'm like, let's go. Because he understands the nature of things. And then there are people that are afraid of their shadows that may be getting in positions of like, yeah, come down and I'll give you 5-MeO DMT because it's a quick acting medicine and you'll be out the door in 1 hour. And I'm a therapist, so I can do it. It's a lot of questioning you have to place on yourself. Why are you doing what you're doing? What hole are you trying to fill? What is this that you're trying to do? I think as human beings, we should always ask ourselves those questions. People are unfit. People who have personality disorders themselves. Therapists are not perfect. People who are facilitators are not perfect. I got training from someone who should not be working with Toad. This is a dangerous person, and I found out a little too bad. You know, I found out the hard way. But this person's going around facilitating.
How can somebody recognize if you're somebody who's seeking ceremony, seeking healing in this way, and you start to engage with a practitioner that you meet through some lead or somewhere? How can somebody who is less familiar identify a practitioner that might not be solid to work with? And then they also, of course, have the task of trusting their intuition and trusting what feels right. But surely there are code of decorum things or lifestyle things, personality things that maybe could be identified in somebody.
I mean,
Besides,
you know, hey, look, I'm wearing jewelry. Okay, this is given by a friend of mine. So before I even say it, like I recognize I'm wearing certain jewelry, right? Having said that, there's a lot of beads and feathers people out there that mask themselves with a whole bunch of stuff, right? Um, it feels like a complete farce of how they're presenting themselves, right? A facilitator or a shaman or someone who, like my mentor, the most unassuming, easygoing guy. And one of the reasons people are drawn to me is I'm real. Like I don't talk that spirit talk and the spiritual language talk. And yeah, of course, that's part of my life, of course. But I don't I don't project myself as this thing that's higher than you. And that's one of the concerns that you should be gonna look at. Like, who is this person and what are they projecting? What image are they projecting outwards? Um, and I say this, we're all human beings. I'm no better than you, Clay. You're no better than me. And if you go and sit with someone and you get that feeling, maybe you should have a look at that.
hmm,
Um, there's a lot of different personality disorders, and people are chameleons, and I'm not faulting them, but because they've had to adapt as a chameleon because of their traumas, and that's how they, these states became traits and they became personality disorders, and then now they're playing out. It's very hard to determine. It's very hard to see. And when I work with someone, I always tell them, like, I understand you're in a lot of pain. I understand you're in a lot of suffering. And I want you to understand that I'm here for you, but I want you to know that I don't want you to give away your power because you feel like you're at the end of the rope and I'm the solution. You're the solution, right? Um, so being with someone on the same track, if you will, knowing that this person is your partner, I think is critical. If there's a power play, that may be looked at. And your intuition, when I say to them, I'm like, I will always speak with you. If there's a word that comes out of my mouth that's not resonant, or it gives you fear, or makes you question things, always stop me and ask, what is that about? Before you even go on the mat. And when we're on the mats, we say our prayers, do the whole thing. And I say, are you ready? And if you, for some reason, decide that this is not the day or you want to be out, there's the door. And I think, again, looking at how people present themselves, that's critical. And why are you attracted to them? That's another question. Are you attracted to them because they have nice blue eyes and tattoos and dreads? Because that's sexy? Or they have a nice ass and big double D's and they're presenting in this way? Is that what you're attracted to? Is that what you're seeking? Like, ask yourself those things. Why are you drawn to them? And this is really the right reason you're going to this person. I mean, maybe another question you need to ask, as someone who's seeking a facilitator, if you will. I guess code of really, I think ultimately is being able to be present with someone. Clay, I work differently. I'm present with someone from the time I speak with them, and if they don't work with me, that's okay too. I give them my time. A lot of people they're so smashed and they're just smashing people and sending them out the door. If you don't feel like you can talk to someone, maybe you should look at that.
These are really helpful tools because a lot of people are seeking and a lot of people are asking the question, and there are lots of offerings. There's no shortage of people who are willing to step into that space and step into that power, whether they have the competency or not. And so to just equip people with the tools to be like, is this a decision that I want to make? Does this feel aligned? So the feeling, does this person put themselves above me? Does this person make me feel like they know something that I don't? That they have some kind of secret? Are they salacious in their sexual expression? Is this a thing? I mean, you mentioned a facilitator that was basically like a nude Instagram model, and I didn't really know what to do with that. I'm really not sure. Like, it doesn't feel like my place as a man to be like, well, is this incompatible? Is there some kind of empowerment of the feminine that's being expressed through that? Or
And that could very well be it. Again, I'm not here to judge. I question myself. Like, would I want to go be vulnerable with this person? Would I attach on them because I'm attracted to them? I mean, it's a good question. You know, like, people are people, and they're going to be attracted to who they're going to be attracted to. My mentor, as I said, is the most unassuming dude. You wouldn't know him from a hole in the wall because he has nothing to prove, nothing to say. This is what it is. This is what we're going to do. Listen to Gabor Mate talk. You know, they're in a state of essential self, if you will. Like A.H. Almas calls, you know, the essential self, this state of spirit and soul, where your decorations and your body parts don't dictate who you are and how you should be perceived.
I definitely have some attachment to that as a person. I don't put myself forward as a facilitator, but I've got like rings and jewelry and things that I like to wear because it's fun to adorn the animal. But I could certainly see how the ego attaches onto that, and the component, and how that might be something that gets in the way or indicative of somebody who has their ego wrapped up in this.
Yeah, yeah, you know, wearing your ego in your sleeve, they call it, you know. Yeah, like as I said, I acknowledge it. This is made by someone who's dear to me, so I wear it. Does it make it who I am? No. Do I advertise it to the world? No. Do I walk down the street in shaman clothes? No. Um, do I speak in a particular flowery language? No. Because that's not who I am. I am who I am. At least I think I am who I think I am.
Uh,
So these are very, very big questions. And I really don't think you get to have those questions answered if you're going to go sit in a group of 30 other people and facilitators that are there. I don't know. Ayahuasca is not my medicine. I've never sat with ayahuasca. I can't speak to it. But from what I hear, that's the thing. You go sit down. I mean, there's this one ayahuasca church, whatever, in Florida, where they I think it was like a Netflix doc that they.
yeah, Soul Quest.
Soul Quest. They had name tags for people. And
Yeah.
like, you put 50 people. I'm like, what is this, man?
It's strange. I mean, if that's how people want to worship, but I just wonder if it is the most conducive to the healing of trauma. I mean, those sorts of circles, they can be very powerful.
Sure.
The place of worship like that, but it might be a fundamentally different thing that we're talking about. The surgical healing of trauma, the going in and focusing on a specific thing that needs attention, and healing it in a small container. That might, maybe from what I'm hearing you say, maybe the most conducive to that. And then maybe there's a religious or sacramental community use that where the intention maybe isn't healing of trauma. The intention is bonding with community and being in presence with spirit, and that whole thing.
I think you made a great distinction, and I'm glad you made it. Again, I'm not trying to. I certainly have respect for that medicine. It's not my medicine, so I can't speak to it. I have friends who work with it, and I respect them and I love them, and that's good. And it may be a different thing, but for me, just as a human being, it would be way overwhelming. I wouldn't be able to handle it. Um, and the nature of my work requires people to just feel safe. If a man is in the room and someone happens to not be safe, another person who I'll be working with, she's like, I was sitting with medicine, and this guy rolled up, and I could just feel his energy, and my mind went on shutdown. I couldn't be with myself because of what she went through, because he probably triggered some parts of her that were wounded because of her childhood trauma. So it is decidedly different. You're absolutely right, and that's a distinction between the work that I do and bigger circles, or circles of people who are sitting with Bufo, and there's 30 people sitting around, and they get opened up, and they're like, "Here we go, see you later." That's mental to me, and that was my experience at first. And I'm glad I had it. That's why I'm here. I don't begrudge that experience. I certainly don't begrudge certain practitioners that were there, but I also saw really bad behavior. I was releasing trauma, and this one practitioner came because she was triggered because she didn't know what to do, right? So she comes, screams at me, and tells me, "Behave yourself and quiet down. You're scaring people." While I'm reliving my trauma in the medicine. This is the shit that happened to me.
And that was a facilitator.
That was a facilitator that works in New York City.
I mean, this is just basic process, basic allowing of space, and there are facilitators who don't even have that. There are volunteers with no experience whatsoever who sit in harm reduction tents all over the place that understand that process is process, that space needs to be made. So the fact that somebody in ceremony wearing the costume of a facilitator would come over and say, like, hey, you need to be less than you are, shut up, be quiet, there's maybe space for that, but man, that's really it's really an egregious. You're a put together person, but I can really see how that could be traumatizing. You're in the middle of a trauma process, and somebody comes over and just says, like, "Hey, this is you need to stop this."
Shut up, because I can't handle the noises you're making. People are scared. It's inconvenient to them.
Oh, it's like the fire of people's expression is too hot, and you want to suppress it, but then it doesn't get burnt properly. Groff has that quote. It's like the full experience of an emotion is the funeral pyre of that emotion.
Beautiful, yeah.
So to let it burn away and to have the full experience of it, and your experience was stopped in that moment. It's amazing that you came from that and are where you are with it. But that's probably happening a lot, I would guess. That sort of thing.
It was stopped and shamed. That's the other thing. Is like shaming someone for having an experience, and then the worst thing that can happen to a child. I mean, like, no, that's not acceptable now. So shut the fuck up, because it's inconvenient to me and the people that are about to go. And this person has a lot of issues in themselves, and we won't get into that matter. But like I said, there's certain people who should not be on the mats.
And I'm thinking, like, well, maybe we all have issues. I'm certainly not without my issues. We've all been, there's some of us who've been on a path of healing and a path of growth. But just to ask, like, well, what does the continuation of that path look like? The inner work that all of us can begin to do and continue to do to keep ourselves, to go into the shadow and to learn what's there, so we can not be the bad examples, so that we can ourselves not be the unfortunate examples and start to serve this in a more beautiful, upright, and pure way.
Yeah. Yeah, no one's perfect. If someone says that they're perfect, you should run. Definitely run the other way. It's a lonely world in my world, because who do I talk to? If I go talk to a therapist, they'll put me on meds. You think that, yeah, I'm having visual and auditory hallucinations, and I'm out of my mind. They class me as something and dope me up. You find people that you feel safe with and respected with, and they can check you and keep you in check, and you can run things by them and do your own work all the fucking time, man. I mean, doing toad medicine, I thought I was done working with toad, but I certainly am not done working with toad. I got my own stuff, but I can delineate where I and my matter stop and when I'm sitting with someone. It's not about me that night or that day or whatever it is.
There's a piece of you that it sounds like gets out of the way. That isn't.
Yeah, I mean, it's not.
For you.
Yeah, when you understand your nature, you understand your own wounding, you understand your own need to find validation or freedom from pain or whatever, then you know not to play those things out when you're sitting with someone. I'd like to think.
Yeah, with toad, because it is your medicine, we've maybe got just a couple more minutes here. I guess I'd just like to talk a little bit about toad medicine, because it is the thing that you work with the most. What sorts of things that works best for, and if there are any contraindications, people who might not be suited to work with such a thing.
That's a long conversation, which I'm happy to have at another time.
Sure.
I will tell you this. I respect medicine a lot. I think it has many different purposes if it's worked with differently. I don't work with large doses because, like I said, I call it you use the metaphor of the house. You go in there and dust with Sananga, do some more dusting with Hape, depending on what you're using. You can definitely move things around. And you'll be like, oh shit, I didn't know that was there. Or it puts the body back into a position where the initial trauma happened, or reveals repressed emotions, or things that were deep down inside. I've been shocked by what is revealed to people. And then working with the right dosages and not really big ones, you can then move the furniture if it's done in the right way with Toad. And then you go in there with MDMA and psilocybin, or MDMA by itself, and you reconstitute. And that's how I've been able to really help people.
I'm wondering, do you screen people that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think also the screening has to happen when you think about the biopsychosocial spiritual elements of life, Clay. Just because the medicine is there doesn't mean someone should do it, because their life may not be in alignment of what these medicines may reveal to them.
How do you
Right.
know? There's so much attraction. All the conversation about like, oh, I want to live a more bright, vibrant life. I want to heal my trauma. How do you know
How do I know what?
if a person's life is aligned with the seeking of medicine or not? When it's
Yeah, I don't decide that for them. I don't say, yeah, I can say, hey, I don't feel comfortable working with you because you have this condition. This, you have a psychiatric condition, which maybe not right for you. I work with someone with borderline. Toad opened them up, psilocybin mixed them up, MDMA put them back together. So that, understanding the nature of personality or personality disorders and what is right for the right person. I don't decide, but I can say I'm comfortable doing this with you. I don't think I'm the right facilitator for you, but I can't refer someone because I don't really trust many people. There's three people in this world that I trust with medicine to facilitate for me, and the people that I love and respect. That's it. But just being really forthright about, okay, these are the matters in your life. This is the structure that's contained you. This is the husband. This is your wife. This is your work. This is your life. This is the nature of your reality. And once you come back from the experience that you have, again, it all really depends on why they're there in the first place. Can you shift yourself? Because some of this stuff, when you come back, you realize this is all bullshit. Fuck it. I don't want to do this. We all bye. But is that the right decision for everyone in your system? Or how do you sort of untangle yourself, extricate yourself from us, extricate yourself from it? And sometimes it takes time and it takes support. And which is the critical thing. The critical thing is continue to care after work with psychedelics. Continue to care. So I have a team of people that are in place. I have a MD. And these are people that I respect, that understand what I do. I have an acupuncturist. I have an herbalist. I have an MBSR trained hypnosis facilitator who works with IFS. That helps a lot of people. Because, okay, I work 4 to 7, 8 days with someone, and then our work is complete. But then I'm not going to be like, see you later, here's a PDF. Go talk to this person, maybe I will talk to the therapist. I talk to therapists, work with therapists before, during, and after, pre, peri, and post. So people are not left to their own devices and be like, well, I hope the medicine takes care of you. Give me my money, bye-bye. Okay, this is a monumental experience in someone's life. Understanding the nature of their life, understanding what contains them, how they contain their container, understanding how they can be supported through it, and putting the right people into position to help these people is critical. Otherwise, they're back on the mat, they're back on the mat, they're back on the mat, they're back on the mat.
And that's not the goal. It's not the thing that we're trying to do.
I lovingly say it, but I'm like, I hope to never see your face again. By the time we're done working, you got what you need, and you go live your life. So you can go be free. Go live your life.
Such a subversion of the model that we work within. It's like the perpetual treatment model versus healing model, and it's really cool to see somebody who's so aligned with that and has organized themselves outside of money and outside of everything else except the healing in a true way. Payam, I feel like you really do that. That you are an embodiment of right relationship with these things, right relationship with the medicines, and have figured out a way to orient yourself to truth, to what is true. And that's why I'm really grateful to talk to you today. That I feel really lucky to have gotten to have this conversation, and I hope your words spread as far as they can, because I think there are a lot of people who could benefit from hearing you and just having that resonant, like, this is what is true, and this is what it looks like to align a life and a practice with that truth, with the truth of the medicine. There's not a lot of alignment there. It's rare, surprisingly rare, when you meet somebody who has aligned their practice with the lessons that they learn. I feel like you've done that. So we're about at time. And I just want to express my appreciation and gratitude for who you are in the world and the work that you're doing and helping bring all of us into a more sane, happy, healthy existence individually and collectively, and being so truly authentically aligned with what you've gleaned as truth. So thank you for that. I want to put up your contact here. So we've got Payam.com and then Instagram Payam underscore healing. That's where people can contact you, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And do you have anything? You mentioned maybe consulting with people or things that you might be available for if people want to have a conversation with you.
The conversations been broached. Therapists have definitely come to me. People in chronic, people who specialize in chronic pain have come to me and like, show me what you know, show me how to train, how to do this. At this point, again, this is really difficult for me because I don't want to disseminate information. It's better for people to know something than to know nothing at all and go out there and do damage. So I have to figure out how that is. But on a small scale, if therapists or people are curious about how to work, I'm certainly happy to hold a circle and go through various matters. I mean, and I'll close with this actually. That there's all these trainings that are happening, and training therapists, and someone who actually came to me. This is another again, could go on forever, but who's a very respected massage therapist. They came to me and they're like, oh, there's an organization in Pennsylvania that asked me to teach massage in 3 days. I'm like, what? Yeah. And I'm like, you're trying to teach massage to people who are facilitating in 3 days? And we went into this whole conversation, and it was not contentious. We're understanding each other. But I was like, the best thing you can do is help someone learn how to hold someone, just to hold them as they're going through an experience. You should not be in the business of massaging someone. Yet an institution or an organization is bringing therapists or people who are interested and teaching massage, which should really not be facilitated in medicine, and calling people in to teach that. And that's just misguided. Yeah, I guess they're well-meaning, but there's a lot of holes, and it's like the wild, wild west. And I'm certainly happy to have conversations around that and what's worked for me and the way I've been able to support. That's key. You're just there as a platform to support someone through it. It's not about you. And if I can impart that wisdom and whatever it is that I can share with the people that are interested, I'll be happy to.
Wonderful. Yeah. I mean, just really appreciate it. I think it's like I keep saying, super, super needed, incredibly needed, and incredibly helpful. So anybody can feel free to contact Payam at the Payam.com or Instagram Payam underscore healing. And then, yeah, I also just want to say Psychedelic Club. If you're interested in continuing the social psychedelic renaissance, bringing people together in a above ground space where you can share your collective interest, find other people who are engaged in this and actively trying to pursue development or healing or whatever other kind of exploration. Psychedelicclub.com to find the others and continue the conversations, spread the renaissance further into the culture. So Payam and everybody who joined us today, I thank you. Big gratitude for who you are in the world, being here in this space with us. And do you have anything else you'd like to say to close? And
Just my love and gratitude.
yes, blessings, so many blessings. Thank you for this time. Thank you for the space. And goodbye, everybody. We will see you online.
Take care.
Bye, Payam.
Bye.